Is it a failure to take responsibility? You're faced with 83% of young people between 35 years and below qualified to work without finding jobs. So you tell them, don't blame me for not creating jobs for you, but blame yourselves for doing the wrong courses. Is that the debate, Melina? What exactly does a country need to do to be able to build, either to manufacture or to produce? I was in Gulu, I spent there some 10 days. And most of the people who have some money in Gulu, some of them in cabinet, some of them in the military, what are they investing in? They're investing in hotels. How does a hotel build a value chain that brings everybody on board and gets people to actually produce something? And people ask, biggest growth areas for this country over the last about 5 or 7 budgets have been the construction sector, the services sector, top growth areas contributing to the budget and GDP, and telecoms. Mm-hmm. All these do not involve actual production of something. What are they servicing? So if you're looking at sciences being able to drive your productivity, your innovation and invention, what kind of interventions does government need to be talking about instead of making a pronouncement? My imagination would be the president come and say, we are putting so much resources into these areas, into these incubation labs, to be able to produce within this period of time. Expect the next 20 years, we shall have produced so many people qualified in these areas. The issue Chris was rising about. Do you see that, and how much does a statement help?
Well, I think there's an assumption that there's going to be a market for the labor that's produced, which is what I mentioned earlier. If you train scientists, that they'll be able to immediately contribute to economic growth and production and innovation and so on. But the fact of the matter is that government probably wouldn't be able to afford, if they're well trained, probably wouldn't be able to afford them in the first place, except in perhaps the oil sector. So, you know, Uganda has a long history of having a very strong medical school, and some of the best doctors in the world, the Ugandan doctors, are they all working here? No, I don't know about most of them, but very many of them have gone to the US, have gone to South Africa, Kenya, etc., because there's better employment opportunities there. So simply focusing on the sciences in terms of training, in terms of education and so on, will only go so far. You may in fact be able to improve the quality of education, which is a question itself. But then after that, where are these people going to go? You can't assume or expect that they'll stay and necessarily be working in this economy if there are much better opportunities elsewhere. Neither can you expect that of them.
But if I may just chip in there, I think also the president is thinking more of vocational, technical type stuff, because the thing is, if you study these science things, you can create your own job, you can start your own workshop, you can start your own small agro processing something. I think that not necessarily that the government then should employ them, but that they can start something of their own. It's as if you study science, the arts, you can start something of your own.
Let me just add a question, Prof, as you come in. We have students watching us. Students are on holiday now. In senior 2, senior 3, in primary, and those starting going into university now. And they're listening to us and saying, where does this debate tilt and how does it help them to make a decision? Because sometimes it's in the mind. You say, me sciences are hard, I'm not going to waste my time on them.
Yes.
And now you're being forced to think critically.
You see, this country is well known for coming up with very good policies. The problem has been in implementation. Right now, we have a very good policy called Vision 2040, which is planning for this country. So what we need now is to come up with a manpower plan, you know. And once you have that, then you know how many doctors you need to train in the next 5 or 10 years, how many nurses, how many social scientists, you know, in every sector, even at what levels, whether PhD, bachelor's, master's, certificate, diploma, and so on. And that one will guide how we plan for resources downwards, like at primary school level. What kind of science labs we have to put in place and how many. If it comes secondary, how many students out of those going in secondary should be taking sciences, you know? But we don't have that plan. We have the Vision 2040.
What's the basis of the statement?
And if you look at Ghana, it has just done that exactly. The manpower plan has it in place and it's working towards fulfilling its Vision 2030 also. So you said the statement on?
Yes, what is the basis of the statement? We need scientists, we don't need
the basis of the statement is for the president to really say, hey, I'm saying I think arts are useless, but I'm just encouraging you to think about it now. Have a debate, let's plan for this country.
So we're thinking about it, and what do we do about it? Chris, we think about it, we're discussing it. Yes. How much more can we do as citizens?
Allow me to deviate from what you're discussing. and this is not to say what you're saying is not very important. All of you have ably brought out what needs to be done. And for me, I want to wear a political lens to look at this topic. That's why I'm saying I'm going to deviate from you. And I will be as blunt as possible, because that's what Arrow boys are good at. And I'm telling you,
You
the
are confessing
problem...
now that you're an Arrow boy.
Yes, I come from Teso.
Yes.
The spirit of Arrow boy means if no one else protects me, I will take it upon myself to get a spear. An arrow is a spear. So that's why we are called the Arrow boys and Arrow
Glad
girls.
that Chris seems well protected. The last time I saw him, there is a change. It seems to.
Okay, so the point here is we should not think about manpower planning. We have very able Ugandans, very able people out there who can give us sound policies, who can plan everything we're talking about. What we don't have sound politics. So for me, I'm thinking the problem is we must sort out the politics. Once it's sorted out, it will allow the variable members here to deploy their intellectual capacity to address Uganda's challenges. And this is why I think all of this is a cumulative thing of Museveni's, I don't know how to call it, struggles from 1986 to run this country. He has proven to only be a good soldier, but not a good manager. That's what I'm seeing. Because when you see problem accumulating now, the youth becoming unemployed, he found the policies in place in agriculture, technology transfer was taking place at the district level, hospitals were going up to the parish level. He disrupted everything to try to engineer Uganda in his own image, as if it's Jesus. Now, the things are catching up with him. He's beginning to blame people. People who did not ask him to come and lead them. He decided to want to lead them. So I want to ask, this is an education issue talking about. If President Museveni really wants more sciences, more whatever he wants, this can only come out of schools. And it can come from public schools, including public universities. Now I ask Bernard a question. If Museveni thinks it plans for this country, how can he provide an education for which he cannot partake of? Where do his children go? Where do his grandchildren go? If you show me any grandchild of Museveni in a UPE school, I will walk naked on the Kampala streets.
And then past UPE.
So, no, listen, that means if you can cook food, you can't eat.
I thought,
You
Chris,
see,
the
now
other
we
question
agree.
would be on who, well, the president is not a scientist. Who among his clan is a scientist and what sciences? They have some scientists.
Yes,
but
so
Chris, the question is, Bernard raised it just before he took the last break. Should we be discussing for the country or what for Museveni? Because there is another issue. What does the country need?
Let me answer you.
But how can the country know what they need?
Listen,
You just have to look at the quality of the population.
No.
You know?
I don't agree with
You
that.
don't agree?
Professor A.B.K. Kasozi, who was the head of the National Council for Education, has been ably writing in the newspapers about the kind of higher education we need. And even he says the universities we have today are increasingly becoming celebrated high schools.
But he's writing.
So now,
Does the population know
listen.
what they need?
Listen. He is
Imagine.
writing for Museveni to read and hearken. We have simply a political class that does not listen. And that's why I'm addressing them. That he cannot pretend to be a champion of what is good for Uganda, when actually he himself is even afraid of what he can output.
Yes.
ABK Kasozi was in the job that you just mentioned. I hope he tried to do something. But
A lot.
from
He was
what I
defeated.
know, he was simply endorsing university after university celebrated
the
high
politics
schools. And-
overruled him.
But the governor of the central bank, you talk about ABK Kasozi, the governor of the central bank, and just about many other people have talked about the problem being posed by these celebrated high schools that are called universities. Now that is an issue right there. But just to sort of cut the president some slack, the crisis that a lot of African countries find themselves in is actually the same, which is an exploding youth population. That population needs jobs, and their economies are unable to provide these jobs in the quantities and the
Even they can't
quality
provide
that are
quality
needed.
education.
And it's not just a Ugandan thing. There's our politics that is, makes things maybe worse. But this is something that
You
is
see,
all over the place. If
but
you
can
had
provide quality education at primary level.
If you've been listening to the criticism against like President Obama, They don't say because Portugal is in a crisis, then America should be comfortable that it is
No,
in
no, no.
because Greece is growing.
No, I'm just providing context that this is
We're not
it's not just we're not alone, and I'm not therefore saying we should be comfortable because there are problems in other places, but just to say that actually says that there is an urgency to address this issue because
to context,
I assume Uganda
let me
wants
say
to be
one
different.
statement.
It wants to be a better run country, wants to be
Yes.
a country that has good
I was,
quality businesses, good quality people, and so we shouldn't be like everybody else.
I was studying
But
the
it's
primary,
important to understand what's
the primary
happening
education
in the
system in
neighborhood
this
as well.
country. The number of students are going into primary. Now, if you are going to provide quality education at primary school level alone, 100% of the budget of Uganda would go into primary school education. 100%. And to not be enough. So you are looking at these issues to do with the youth marriage, where the country cannot really afford to provide for everybody. Yet the government has to remain in power. So you have to do what can keep you in power.
And then
what is
beyond
that
that,
which
it's
is
a
most
scandal.
critical?
Started 60 billion going to one individual.
We-
And the country has no money.
We'll come to the
No,
Gandala
no,
scandal
no,
in
no, no. I don't
Mukono
buy that
Katosi
one.
scandal in the last quarter of this discussion. Melina, I want to come to you on this. If you're talking about, I think the next statement will be about investment in agriculture, studying agriculture, practicing agriculture. District farm institutes, apart from the multiplication of districts, traditional district farm institutes in this country have disappeared almost across the country. Stock farms that existed in major regions of this country, we're discussing with Ebabiha the other time, have almost disappeared. The one in Imbarara the other day, there was a fight about it. The one in Kabarole was almost dysfunctional. Across the country, they're not there. And these are the centers you'd expect that intermediate science teaching, practical teaching would be taking place. So if you have a discussion here, I thought that statement by the president would be made when you're meeting with your key policy people, your key technical people, and say, this is what we need to do. This is what we're planning to do. This is where it is missing. And when you come out to speak to the public, you say, this is what we are doing, not what our frustration is.
Yep.
And so I'm wondering how you take this back, because no laboratories in primary school, no farm school gardens still exist today. The chemicals are not there. So how exactly?
School gardens.
Yes, school gardens. They used
It's
to
a very
exist.
colonial
Yeah, I
thing,
know.
actually.
It's a very colonial thing.
Yes, that was their idea. Teach people how
how to do
to
things.
have a garden.
So what is the basis of this discussion?
Well, I think one thing I wanted to highlight is much of our discussion has been on tertiary education, so university or vocational, whatever. And if you look at the percentage of people or youth, if we're talking about, Uganda has the youngest population in the world, 78% of the population is under the age of 30. In a recent report by the Higher Education Council, found that about 6% of Ugandans are making it to tertiary education. So even the discussion we're having right now affects a tiny minority of the population. And so you have to ask the question, for the rest of the population, for the 95% of people who don't make it to that point, what are they doing, and how can the system better serve them? These are the people who are actually going to be providing, who are the workhorses of the economy. And if you focus so much on the highest levels of education and leave behind the, focusing on primary level, you're serving the elite primarily. And you saw this happen, immediately after independence as well. The same kind of problems emerged. You have a huge manpower crisis, and a lot of the attention and a lot of the resources went into higher education. And these resources benefit those who are already best off. They benefit the elite and leave behind the rest of the population who were never able to make it even close to that level in the first place.
Can I give one example?
Prof, you raised something about, yes.
Can I give this example? If you look at Mutesi One Royal University today, you know what it was? A technical college. Now it is teaching religious studies. If you look at Busitema University, there was the Busitema, is it Agriculture College? We got about 5 of them that were teaching sciences. Now, still teaching science, but at degree level, not at the lower levels of vocational education. You go to
Chambogo University.
Chambogo.
The Polytechnic.
Certificate diploma institutions were upgraded to university. Now it is teaching humanities and so on. So basically, it takes us back to the issue
and all that was
of,
policy signed off by a certain
of
YKM
planning,
7,
you know?
isn't it?
It takes
Who
us
is now
back
complaining.
to, you have to go
that
back
was
and plan.
celebrated at some time as some growth.
People needed universities. So
Did
we need
people-
to go back to the planning board and then really decide on how to take this country. Using Vision 2040, you see, what else do we need? The
But
education
I
sector and
asked,
so
I
on.
asked the question, if we're speaking to a high school student watching us now,
Yes.
what message are we giving them?
The message you are giving them is that, look, you need to go after your career dream. Whether it is the history, whether it is geography, whether it is music, dance, and drama, go after it. At the end of the day, you're going to be successful. I don't think sciences or technology can make anybody successful. It's about what you have passion for. You saw this lady, is it in Tare something? She was on BBC, right? Focus on Africa program. But how many professors have been on that program? Almost none. So, and she's becoming famous, and she's making money. She's being successful. So I think you can be good at anything. So we should not say you people in primary schools start focusing on mathematics, on physics. It's a good thing. America did it, came up with the STEM program, the science, technology, engineering program, engineering math program, because it felt that they need more engineers, more scientists. In this country, we do need the same. But you can do it by promoting sciences, by establishing schools that are science-based, providing for facilities, providing for teachers. Actually, the biggest challenge in this country are teachers. We don't have enough teachers to teach science.
Why don't we have teachers?
Because we have not focused on having in place these teacher training colleges that are focused on training science teachers.
So
How many do you know?
Chris, just a moment, as you come in on that, the question is, who are you going to rely on to teach sciences? Because countries that are focused on sciences have actually been sustainably more progressive. You can take the example of Germany. You can take the example of investments by China, for example, more recently. The United States is going back to focus a little more on sciences and producing what I think President Obama has called made in, those magical words, made in the USA, because that is a product of science investment largely, and people with that kind of skill set to be able to produce something. But Chris, if you're speaking to young people watching this discussion and their parents, and we're in this, they have sold off all the land to try and get someone through school, and they're hoping they're going to get something out, and the kids have gone back home and they have no job. What would you tell them?
There are a lot of things. First of all, they're in a dilemma. So, and the country is in a dilemma. There's no straight answer you're going to give them that do this. For me, I want to look at this thing and keep reminding you people, Museveni is succeeding in one thing, making us discuss these challenges as if they are starting now. He is succeeding to make us believe that there was nothing prior 1986. So every problem we are seeing is a new problem. So is he succeeding in failing to explain why he came and he destroyed that which worked at that time when he was not a president? We had issues of access to education at a lower level, that Melina is talking about. But the issues of quality were there. The issues of equity were there. A minister would be in Kampala, a child is in Kabong. But that child would compete to come to Budo. What does Museveni do when he comes to power? No minister of Museveni today has their children in a UPE school. But ministers used to have their children in this UPE school. Even class formation now. The children, my children, cannot interact with the Beremreba's children.
Why?
Because Papa, he's an international school. Those days, children of ministers, of peasants were all in one class. Today, there is already segmentation. How did it happen? Museveni should answer that one.
But
We are not going to say, we're not going to say, yes, we need scientists, we need arts, you have answered that. There was Eligon Technical, to add what you said. There was Lira Technical. There was Kichwamba Technical. What happened to them? So when he tells us that we need scientists, Museveni is saying he's the one who knows, like he was saying, that he has been consistent on this. Come on! Other leaders were consistent. They had the valley dams. They were rolling vocational schools to the villages. Someone comes because of his own orientation, dismantles that. Now intellectuals are discussing these issues like, the president is discovering our problems and is really thinking hard how to solve them. He should begin by appreciating that he made policy mistakes.
By providing accountability.
Yes,
Prof.
policy mistakes.
But do you think, and I'll give an example as the Vice Chancellor at Mackay University put it. If we are Mackay University admitting 15,000 students, would you expect Mackay to admit, let's say, 1,000 on the Bachelor of Arts program? The answer is no. Because there are certain programs where you admit students, as you put it, they finish the 3 years when you know they're not going to get any job. So we are looking at ratios here. And to me, I think the president is right in some way that, we are having so many students going into humanities. I think we need to slow down and have more of them going into sciences. But we need to start at the lower levels.
Allow me
We need to start at the lower levels.
When you wanted to have children.
Allow me answer Professor Barrier. when you talk about the president, you people, I want to disabuse you intellectuals of worshiping this individual.
We are not worshiping
Well, if
him.
we didn't want,
Let's see.
if we didn't want many people to go to Makerere for arts, we would be having Elgon Technical so sound. We would be having Kichwamba very vibrant.
But that's
We would
what
be-
we are saying.
that's where others
Let's
would be
go
going.
back to those.
Busitema would be vibrant. It is through his policy statements, policy directives, that all of these have collapsed. And what do people want? To go to Makerere, to go to the, how do they call it, the campus, to the hill. When he was here, come on, let's not...
Gentlemen, let's
not be, let's not be
we are
dis-
taking a
deceived.
break. When
No.
people wanted to stimulate girl child education, they created, and they realized that putting girls and boys in the same school would not give them the same opportunity. They created girls' schools
Yes.
and promoted them. So if you want to promote sciences, you build science schools.
You bring UPE, you take your children
Let's
abroad.
take a break. When we
What
come
kind of
back,
leader
we'll
are
be
you?
tackling another issue that has been causing a lot of debate over the last few weeks. The controversy surrounding the Mukono Katosi Road, dragging in ministers at the Ministry of Works, who has also dragged in colleagues, some in ICT and I think the presidency. We'll be discussing that after a short break.
Coming to visit us a little later, so we realized we need to do something that will just us the guys, you know, have a good time, catch up. By the time they come, we are already friends, and we're going to do fish. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to bake this fish. This is tilapia. Most people confuse tilapia and Nile perch, and I remember when I was sharing with him, he said he only gets the difference on the plate. Now, tilapia is ngege, the short one. Nile perch is the imputa. That's
The
only,
big one.
Yeah, the big one. That's the only way I can tell the difference. So today, our main ingredient is going to be the fish, which is tilapia. And then I have chives here. They look like grass, but these with mayonnaise, they're such a great combination. So these are called chives. I'm going to use some cherry tomatoes. I'm sure by now, if you've been watching Kitchen Delight, you must be very familiar with this. And of course, where there's fish, lemon is inevitable. Anytime you do fish, anytime you see fish, there must be lemon. This is a match made in heaven. And then, of course, we shall have the potato here to finish it off. And of course, that part that everybody enjoys, the best part of the show. Remember, everything you see on Kitchen Delight is brought to you by Santa Lucia. And of course, NTV, making sure your world is turned on every day. In my kitchen, of course, not my kitchen. In the kitchen today, I'm with my host, Juko here. Juko, it's a pleasure to have you and cook with you in your kitchen. Thank you for inviting me. You're going to be my assistant here. We're going to cut potatoes, we're going to cook together and eat together.
I invited him over Facebook a few months ago, and he replied and decided to pay me a visit one of these days. When I passed the kitchen test, he came and looked around, and when I passed the test, I was like, thank God, finally he's here. So
Yes,
I'm happy to.
Good for our health. I don't know how I can explain that. But all we're looking for is texture. We want it to be held together. And we're going to grill it, you know? So that's why we keep it like that. And as you're cutting, I'll just drizzle salt over because we're now starting to season. Just continue cutting, don't worry. Just put a little bit of seasoning. Get some black peppercorns. Just over. Simple as that. And you know, in the kitchen, I've always told you, you're only limited by your creativity. You know, it's that simple. As long as you have these flavors. Then I have some oregano flakes. Still, just a little bit. So now we're done. All I'm going to ask you is to drizzle some olive oil.
over all
Yeah,
this.
just over and then toss them, and we are good to go. As he's drizzling the oil so that they don't dry up, we're going to put them in the oven for between 15 and 20 minutes, depending on how hot the oven is. And as it's continuing there, my oven here has been going for the last like 15, 20 minutes. It's really hot now. If I can open, you can see it's just like 5 minutes there to get to 200. Then we shall place everything in there and give it 20 minutes. Now, as it's dressing that, we're going to work with our fish here. So the oil, the flakes, you know, the flavors can marry together. And then after that, we have cherry tomatoes. Now, the reason I want to use cherry tomatoes, I don't want to cut them because we want to have some juiciness when we're eating. You know, it has a lot of juice. So just pick a few of these tomatoes and mix them in there so they can also pick the flavor and the aroma that comes from the potatoes and all the seasoning. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to open this oven for you, and you're going to put all this just on the tray. Now, as I told you, we're expecting some guests. So what we did, we've been preparing for them. So we have something going in here. This is just for the guys, so when they come, we are ready for them. Now, this is done. This is how we want it. Just potatoes, just like that. Simple as that. Grill them and have them, enjoy them, and deliciously have them go down. Okay, you need to open. Now what you're going to do is we're going to place these tomatoes in the oven for at most 20 minutes. 20 minutes. All you have to do is just drop them over. Just be careful. I'm sure you have seen that video where this guy drops and runs away and drops and runs away. But that's not going to be the case. And I just spread them over. Just like that. So as you can see, we're turning and we're putting the skin on top first. Then after 20 minutes, we shall have to turn them around. And then our fish will just sit on top of the potatoes and we shall be good to go. So now you can just close. Now with the fish, what we're going to do is because the fish cooks very fast. So what we're going to do is we just need to dress it with olive oil, some salt, some pepper, and a squeeze of lime. Simple as that. As you can see, it's a fillet. The skin is off, it's just a flesh, and this cooks for at most 8 minutes, and it's done. If it goes beyond that, it will be so soft, you won't be able to eat it. It just mash. So you want to maintain the texture. Now, when they say drizzle, this is what they mean by drizzling. Yeah, simple as that. So now, like that. So we'll have some salt. Yeah, we're going to put salt. Just drizzle over. But you need to be very careful. That's enough. That's enough. So flip it over again, and then... Now what we're doing here is what we call dressing. We are dressing our fish. Everything you see on Kitchen Delight, remember, is brought to you by Santa Lucia, of course, makers of beautiful pasta, very delicious, very healthy, and good for your family. Now, we put oil, sprinkle some pepper, some cumin. Okay. What I like about him is that he's very generous, you know. Yes, that's
Is that
yeah,
enough?
yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
And then some cumin. No, just one side. Some cumin.